He was supposed to deliver an economic-focused speech yesterday in North Carolina, but just as you put, Willie, minutes after taking the stage, he questioned the significance of the economy in November's election, and again veered off several times to personal attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris. Take a look.
Now, this is a little bit different day because this isn't around. We're talking about a thing called the economy. They wanted to do a speech on the economy. A lot of people are very devastated by what's happened with inflation and all of the other things. So we're doing this as a intellectual speech. You're all intellectuals today. Today we're doing it, and we're doing it right now, and it's very important. They say it's the most important subject. I think crime is right there. I think the border is right there, personally. We have a lot of important subjects because our country has become a third world nation. We literally are a third world nation. We're a banana republic in so many ways, and we're not going to let that happen because we're starting a free fall. She went from being a totally disrespected person 6 weeks ago. Nobody thought she had a chance. Nobody, and I don't think she can possibly win. If she does, our country is finished. You want to know the truth. But she was totally disrespected. The most unpopular vice president in the history of our country. For nearly 4 years, Kamala has crackled as the American economy has burned. What happened to her laugh? I haven't heard that laugh in about a week. That's why they keep her off the stage. That's why she's disappeared. That's the laugh of a crazy person, I will tell you, if you haven't known it. It's a crazy. She's crazy. They told her, don't laugh, don't laugh. No, it's her. No, her laugh is career threatening. They said, don't laugh. She hasn't laughed. She doesn't laugh anymore. It's smart, but someday it's going to come out. That's the laugh of a person with some big problems. We're not going to let this incompetent socialist lunatic keep breaking our economy for 4 more years. It'll destroy our country. On Election Day, we're going to tell her that we've had enough, that we can't take it anymore, Kamala. You're doing a horrible job. You know why she hasn't done an interview? Because she's not smart. She's not intelligent. And we've gone through enough of that with this guy, Crooked Joe.
It's sort of overwhelming because, yeah.
I just feel the need to laugh,
Mika. Simone, like, I do feel the need to laugh. And actually, Kamala's laugh, her on TikTok, she is killing it with the young people and all those things that people on the far right are putting out there as like, look how crazy young people love. And she's becoming an internet sensation for laughing, for saying things and then enjoying a joke or actually answering questions from young people that are funny. And it's just sort of interesting to watch all this turn on its head for Republicans who think it's going badly for her, but don't miss the part where it's going really well. Or when you do, you actually have to grasp and say that her crowds are created by AI. So, Katy, I tried to follow that. And this is the interesting thing about Donald Trump, and it's important for those preparing to debate him or interview him, because he goes on so many strange tangents that you can't keep up to a point, and then when he realizes he's not going anywhere, he just starts attacking someone personally. I think he was talking about the economy, and I think he said it was an important subject, but then he moved to the border and talked about, you know, this third world nation that we live in, the United States of America, and then said that the economy was in a free fall. And then at that point, when perhaps, I don't know, maybe he realized he didn't know what he was talking about, or maybe he just lost his train of thought, then he goes into these attacks against Kamala Harris. But again, on, you know, in the world of TikTok and in the world of campaign coverage, the very things he's talking about, a lot of people really love.
Yeah, Donald Trump doesn't really like giving policy speeches. He doesn't really like policy. He feels that kind of hems him in a bit, and it pins him down to ideas and things that he might have to deliver on. He tends to prefer the personal, which is why he goes on attack on the personal. I mean, I had lunch this week with somebody who's advising him, speaks to him every week, and said, look, every minute not spent speaking about the economy, immigration and crime is minutes lost. Well, there you have a kind of hour-plus long speech, and about 10 minutes of it is economic policy, which is basically cutting taxes, and the rest of it is, like you say, Mika, kind of meanderings into the personal, because that's just where he feels more comfortable. When it comes to debating him, I think Donald Trump is one of the hardest people to debate. I think Kamala Harris is excited about the prospect of debating him, but he's not an easy person. Ask anyone who has debated him. He's not an easy person to debate because of all of this. And I think Democrats have to be careful not to underestimate how, yes, everything is moving in their direction. Yes, like you say, Kamala Harris is a massive TikTok phenomenon at the moment, but they have to make sure those young people actually turn out and vote. And historically, obviously, young people turn out and vote in lower numbers than older people. And, you know, be careful about prepping for the debate, right? Because this is not going to be easy for them.
You know, Mike, as you listen to that speech and the tone that Donald Trump brings, the American carnage tone, reminded of the line that Governor Josh Shapiro uses, which I won't repeat here, but basically says, hey, man, stop S-talking America. We actually love this place. We know we're imperfect. We've got things to work on. The border could be better. The economy, inflation could be lower. But why do you hold this country in such low regard? And when you listen to that, you wonder, I know there's a core group that connects with, but most Americans are proud of this place we live in. We want to improve it every day. We got a ways to go to make it the place that it should be and can be. But the joy that we see at the vice president's rallies that uplifts these crowds versus what you see in that speech, the contrast is really stark, and it's a contrast that the Harris campaign likes to see.
Yeah, it's literally the campaign is yesterday versus tomorrow. I mean, we just saw yesterday. We saw a man standing there on the stage saying, we are literally a third world country. I don't know anyone who believes that we are literally a third world country. And the thing about the Trump campaign now that makes me wonder a lot about it is Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita running their campaign are extremely good at what they do, but they seem to have lost control of their candidate. Their candidate has a tired 20-year-old act. We just saw it. Yeah. He updates it with some figures from the past 2 or 3 years, but it's a tired old act. The election was stolen. We're a third world country. Crime is up. Immigrants are going to rape your daughter. All sorts of fear factors, and a lot of it with huge, ugly racial overtones, especially when it comes to the vice president. And you wonder, how long will it be before he really goes out of control? And I think what's going to happen is when that debate occurs and he's in the ring with the vice president of the United States, a woman, a very sophisticated, very intelligent woman, and she hammers him like a prosecutor and doesn't let him off the hook, he will go, well, I can't say it, but something will snap in him, and that'll be it.
And certainly there is that juxtaposition of cop versus con, prosecutor versus convicted felon. We should remember that's still a major issue here, too. And you mentioned Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita, campaign leadership team. For now, I mean, there is growing unhappiness from Trump. I know we're going to get to that in a moment with Hugo about his team. We should note in every presidential campaign Donald Trump has ever run, he has fired his campaign manager in the month of August. 3 for 3. This could be number 4. And this is, or 2 for 3, and this could be number 3. And I think that there is growing unhappiness. They have not been able to adjust to what the change atop the Democratic ticket. And we're going to see another news conference from Trump today for exactly that reason. He's upset with his staff. He feels like only he can turn this around. He's his best messenger. So that's why he's going in front of
And the problem is putting him out there. We just see all this again. He thinks it helps him, but I think most of his advisors disagree. We mentioned Hugo Lowell. Let's bring in the senior political correspondent for The Guardian. Out just this morning with new reporting. His piece titled Top Trump Advisors in Turmoil After Campaign's Worst Month of 2024. Hugo, good morning. So let's continue this conversation. John just mentioned it. 2 well-regarded political operators at the top of this campaign. Are their jobs in trouble?
You know, look, the shocks are circling. It has been a bad enough previous month for the Trump campaign, that there are enemies, kind of real and perceived, I think, that are starting to look at the Trump campaign's leadership team and really start to tell Trump, you know, you got to get rid of these guys and you got to reset and you got to do it now. And the meeting that, you know, consistently comes up in kind of people's minds around the campaign is this August 2nd meeting that happened between Trump, Lara Trump, and Kellyanne Conway, where they kind of discussed like strategy and kind of policy positions. And Kellyanne Conway told us that she did not talk about anyone's titles or mention any names or said that anyone should be fired. But the takeaway from that meeting for the Trump campaign leadership was Kellyanne's coming for their jobs, or at least they had such a bad month that Kellyanne felt emboldened enough to make a play, or felt emboldened enough to kind of suggest that, you know, they needed to go. And the takeaway for the campaign is they have to take this very, very seriously. You know, as John said, summertime is a bad month for the Trump campaign historically. In 2016, they brought in Kellyanne Conway and David Bossie and Steve Bannon. And in 2020, they replaced Brad Parscale with Bill Stepien. And so this has historically been the time when Trump makes changes, and there is some concern now that this could be in the offing.
Hugo, there's been some reporting, too, that Donald Trump now at this point is unhappy with the choice of J.D. Vance as his running mate, that he perhaps would have preferred someone else. This is him deflecting, obviously, what's been happening over the last 4 weeks to blame somebody else as if it's J.D. Vance's fault for what he says out there and how things are going. But are you picking up any of that, any regret, buyer's remorse?
You know, I think there was some remorse initially when the childless cat comments came out. I think it's kind of shifted a little bit, and it's because, you know, as ever in Trump world, it's whoever has the last word with Trump, and the last word with Trump at the moment is, you know, J.D. Vance could continue to be okay for us. Because if you think about it from the Trump campaign's perspective, the one thing that J.D. Vance does, it targets a very specific demographic that the campaign is trying to turn out, and that's the white male vote. And kind of my colleagues have also reported on this, but J.D. Vance does speak to that demographic, and they think, you know, if there is one way they can pitch it to Trump in a way that he won't sour on his running mate, it is to say, look, this is a guy that can get out a key demographic for us in November, and so you need to stick with him, you know, regardless of how you feel at this point.
All right, senior political correspondent for The Guardian, Hugo Lowell, thank you very much for being on with us.
For our young moms and our young dads to be able to have whatever family they want to have, and for them to not feel like it's going to ruin their career or ruin their future, we should be encouraging young moms and dads to bring life into the world. And I think there are a whole host of ways in which we prevent them from doing it, and that's got to change.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in the East. When you see that guy, what do you think? We think cleanup on aisle 9. The GOP's vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, is on the defense again for comments he made about women and their rights. Those comments from Vance today were his attempt to clarify remarks he made about abortions back in 2021, written up by the Christian Science Monitor. Quote, Vance argued that companies supporting abortion rights really just want a pool of, quote, cheap labor, with workers unburdened by the cost and time commitment of caring for children. Citing former Georgia Democratic House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams' assertion that a Georgia abortion ban would be bad for business, he said, quote, she was right. When the big corporations come against you for passing abortion restrictions, when corporations are so desperate for cheap labor that they don't want people to parent children, she's right to say that abortion restrictions are bad for business. And apparently no woman, if she is of childbearing age or not, is free from Vance's harsh critiques. In 2020, the GOP's vice presidential nominee was on a podcast and seemingly agreed with the interviewer, who said this, quote, the whole purpose of the postmenopausal female is to help raise children. He agreed with that. Vance's spokeswoman denied that that's what happened, saying he does not agree with that sentiment that the host said and he agreed with. But here's part of the conversation where Vance is talking about his mother-in-law, his wife's mother, leaving her powerful job to take care of his newborn son.
And you can sort of see the effect it has on him to be around them. Like, they spoil him. There's sort of all the classic stuff that grandparents do to grandchildren. But it makes him a much better human being to have exposure to his grandparents.
Well, I don't know.
And the evidence on this, by the way, is like super clear.
That's the whole purpose of the postmenopausal female in theory. But let me ask you a question, not knowing the answer.
Please.
When your child was born, did your in-laws, and particularly your mother-in-law, show up in some huge way?
She lived with us for a year.
Right.
So,
So I didn't know the answer to that.
Right. No,
that's this weird unadvertised feature of marrying an Indian woman.
No, it's in some ways the most transgressive thing I've ever done against sort of the hyper neoliberal approach to work and family.
His own words on tape. Added benefits of marrying an Indian woman. He said that. But even crazier than this latest revelation is what Vance said last night. Watch this stunning exchange on Fox News.
Senator, one of my dear friends tonight said to me, well, all these suburban women, all they care about is abortion, and they don't understand that decision is with the states now. It's not banned nationally, even if some people want it to be banned nationally. It's with the states. What do you say to suburban women out there who are marinating in this propaganda?
Well, first of all, I don't buy that, Laura. I think most suburban women care about the normal things that most Americans care about, right? They care about inflation. They care about the price of groceries. They care about public safety in the streets where their kids play.
Normal things. To which the presumptive Democratic vice presidential nominee, Governor Tim Walz, clapped back, saying, quote, "It's pretty normal to respect a woman's right to make her own damn health care decisions. The American people will see these two men go toe-to-toe when they debate each other on October 1st. A very low-energy Donald Trump continues to drone on alongside a table of groceries outside his mansion in Bedminster, New Jersey this hour. It's more and more weird and misogynistic comments from his VP, though, which is where we begin today with some of our favorite experts and friends. Former GOP communications director and co-founder and CEO of the Seneca Project, Tara Setmeyer, is back. Plus, the president of Reproductive Freedom for All, Mini Timuraju, is back. Also joining us, former campaign manager for Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign, Jim Messina, is here. And former Trump impeachment manager, Congresswoman Madeleine Dean of Pennsylvania, is here. Vinny, I'll let you go first. What do you do if you're married to someone who, over the natural course, at some point, his wife will be a postmenopausal woman, and you're married to someone who thinks your only purpose is to take care of future grandchildren? It is a worldview that puts him so outside the mainstream of even Republican, sort of, I guess, former Republican thinking. This is a very, very extreme and radical and bizarre guy.
So, as an Indian American postmenopausal woman myself, I've been waiting for this moment, Nicole. Man, what an embarrassment. This guy is a total embarrassment to his family, to their community, my community, the Indian American community. His mother-in-law is an accomplished academic and professional. She took a year off of her life to help raise their baby, and this is the kind of racist, misogynistic nonsense she has to hear in the press. Look, I mean, I can't speak for Usha Vance and her family and what they knew or didn't know about J.D. Vance. I can say, as an Indian American who grew up in this country, I really hope his kids aren't having to hear all this nonsense, because it's really destructive and it's really dangerous. But at the end of the day, J.D. Vance is running for vice president of this country. And it is unacceptable that he has this viewpoint, not just about women, but about immigrant communities, about so many of us. And postmenopausal women are about to show up and let him know what our goal is. And it is to stop a Trump-Vance presidency and vice presidency. And it is to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Well, Minnie, Hillary Clinton tweeted this: childless cat ladies, postmenopausal females. Is the Republican ticket aware that women can vote? It's pretty politically, forget about how offensive the comments are. Politically, you're going to X out all of these people from your coalition. It's insanity.
It's also bizarre how much of this, Nicole, that he was just willing to say out loud publicly on podcasts, to press, even in the last couple of weeks, Look, it's a really distinct worldview. I talk a lot about the need to draw contrast, right? It's not enough just to say what we're against, but to also say what we're for. So going back to a J.D. Vance, Tim Walz debate, look, we have a very clear delineation. One party espouses a set of policies that are bad for American families and that hurt American women, but also all childbearing people in this country, and I guess postmenopausal women too. And one party wants to advance care. It's not just about abortion access and reproductive freedom. It's also about the care economy, paid family leave, investment in universal child care, and investment in an economy that will provide and strengthen Americans who want to have families. And it's very, very clear. So that, if anything, it's helpful for us to have more proof of that.
Congresswoman, there's a disdain for women. Even in separating and pitting against one another, the professional value of his wife, who went back to part of that podcast, I listened to more of it than I played, was about how she was going to start her clerkship. So it is also this really sick pitting one group of women, the postmenopausal female, that's his mother-in-law, against his wife of childbearing age, and deciding that her career value was greater. She had to go back to her clerkship than his mother-in-law's. There's more than misogyny in there. There's ageism, there's sexism. He called it transgressive when he agreed with the interviewer who said it's a benefit, a benny, of marrying into an Indian family. I mean, this is some really, really nasty stuff wrapped up in this guy's mind.
Well, it's good to be with you, Nicole, and also Minnie and Tara and Jim. I have to admit to you, shocking as it may be, I too am postmenopausal, and I have grandchildren, and I love the time I get to spend with my grandchildren. And any time I can be a part of their upbringing is something I enjoy. In fact, all 4 of my grandchildren have been with me this week. So that's a lot of fun. But what J.D. Vance is doing is he's showing how he has no core. He has no core set of values. He has no idea, actually, what he stands for. After all, this was the person who said, I'm a never Trumper. He compared Trump to an American Hitler. So when he talks about women in this misogynistic way, it's stunning and shocking. He also talked about suburban women not caring, as you pointed out, about reproductive health care, about abortion rights and health care, that they care about normal things like inflation, cost of groceries, and crime. The truth is, I'm also a suburban woman who represents hundreds of thousands of suburban Philadelphia women. We care very much around our reproductive health care choices, our privacy rights and choices. We don't want J.D. Vance or Donald Trump or state legislators in our doctors' offices. Even as we have the ability to care about inflation and crime and the cost of groceries, J.D. Vance doesn't want to talk about the fact that all of those things have gone in the correct direction. Inflation is down, the economy is improving, crime is down. They are so flailing, Nicole. They are unhinged, and we see it both in the soulless J.D. Vance and the unhinged, dark Donald Trump.
We begin this hour with breaking news. Former President Donald Trump's legal team has asked to delay his hush money trial sentencing until after the presidential election. Joining us now, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Also with us, NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. And Lisa, good morning. What more are we learning about this?
Jose, what we're learning this morning is that former President Trump's lawyers are asking Judge Juan Merchan to move the date of his sentencing, which is currently scheduled for September 18th, to some date after the election. Now, Judge Merchan has a pending motion before him to vacate the verdict. That motion is supposed to be decided by September 18th. By September 16th, a couple of days before. But the conventional wisdom is that he's going to deny it and then move along to sentencing. In this letter, they're telling him, you should hold this sentencing, if at all, until after the election. And one of the most interesting features they're saying is, if you deny our motion to set aside the verdict, by postponing the sentencing, you will allow us to pursue appellate options. That's a signal that former President Trump is not going to take a decision from Judge Merchan lying down, but is thinking about going to either state and or federal appeals courts to try and fight the verdict before any sentencing hearing could happen.
And Lisa, so far, the judge has denied all of the motions that the Trump team has presented to it.
I mean, Jose, he has granted motions here and there, but he has denied their post-trial motions so far, including a motion to recuse himself from the case. That was the third such motion, which he denied earlier this week. In this letter today, they are saying, because you have denied the motion to recuse, by postponing the sentencing until after the election, any conflict that we see would be alleviated by your having the sentencing after any election with which your daughter is allegedly affiliated. The campaign continues to say that Judge Merchan's daughter is affiliated with the Biden-Harris campaign. Her firm has denied that, saying they do no work for the Biden-Harris campaign and have not been engaged in such activities since the beginning of 2023, Jose.
And Vaughn, meanwhile, what's the political calculus for Team Trump?
Right. We actually saw, I mean, to Lisa's point here, we saw yesterday on social media Donald Trump bemoan the fact that there is a gag order that is still placed on him related to this case. He is able to go on the attack against witnesses, or even the jury, Judge Merchan himself, as well as District Attorney Alvin Bragg. But the part of the gag order that remains is the inability for him to go on the attack or talk about members, family members of the court, which would be Judge Merchan's daughter, who, Todd Blanche, in this letter to the court, is implying is politically motivated and has, because of his familial connection to her apparent work that they allege that she is a part of through the company that she at least at one time worked for, is therefore under the auspices of being unable to be a fair arbiter in this sentencing or in the decision to come on September 16th of whether to toss the verdict out from the jury altogether under the immunity argument that Donald Trump's attorneys have now placed before Judge Merchan. So September 16th is when we should know that decision from Judge Merchan as it pertains to the motion to dismiss on presidential immunity claims. And then September 18th is the sentencing. And part of what they outline in the letter is the fact that that sentencing will come after early voting in some states has already commenced. And some of the key battleground states or potential battleground states, including Minnesota, Virginia, they begin voting on September 20th. And so you see where the timeline here, it's getting all scrunched together. Of course, the first presidential debate, in which we anticipate both of them being on stage, is September 10th, which would be 1 week before that September 18th sentencing. So there is a lot on the line for Donald Trump here. And clearly, he and his attorney, Todd Blanche, are making the case that the American public should not have the sentencing laid before them, and that Donald Trump should have the opportunity to appeal any sentencing until after the election. I just want to read you one very specific line from the bottom of this letter from Todd Blanche. It says, quote, "Setting aside naked election interference objectives, there is no valid countervailing reason for the court to keep the current sentencing date on the calendar. There is no basis for continuing to rush." I note Todd Blanche's use of the words election interference objectives. We heard Donald Trump in a social media post suggest that the gag order on him being unable to talk about Judge Merchan's daughter is also election interference. We've seen Donald Trump here in the last days begin to lay the foundation for claiming that the 2024 election has been rigged and stolen due to election interference. Of course, I'll leave it up to others to make that determination, but it is clear what Donald Trump and his attorneys are outlining as a sentencing in this case, the way in which they would politically frame it to the mass public at large here across the country.
The wild contrast in mood and momentum between two campaigns. The pictures tell the story. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden holding a raucous campaign event with a fired-up crowd. Hours later, Donald Trump holding a solo press conference amid criticism from his own allies that he's sputtering and flailing on the campaign trail. Biden and Harris appearing in Maryland, their first joint event since Biden dropped out. It was billed as a White House event about Medicare and prescription drug prices, which might sound kind of dry, but the energy was high. Here was the long line outside in the middle of a Thursday afternoon. And trust me, I know Largo, Maryland. That is hard to get there by traffic. Harris and Biden literally embracing each other on stage. The crowd was also feeling the love.
And today we take the next step, thank you, Joe, forward in our fight.
Biden and Harris both shouting each other out.
It is my eternal and great, great, great honor, I have to tell you, to serve with this most extraordinary human being.
Thank you, Kamala.
I could speak all afternoon about the person that I am standing on this stage with.
Folks, I have an incredible partner. The progress we've made, she's going to make one hell of a president.
An American and leader, our President, Joe Biden.
It is truly a love fest. The Harris campaign also going on offense with a new ad blitz, spending $90 million in battleground states. But here's the thing. The ads will also hit voters in markets that, quote, former President Trump's campaign is targeting, like Toledo, Ohio, and Youngstown, Ohio. It suggests the Harris campaign sees an expanding electoral map, forcing Trump to play defense in Ohio, which really hasn't been a swing state in 5 cycles. Democrats are not alone in seeing Trump's weaknesses. MAGA allies and other conservatives basically trying to stage a public intervention, openly pleading for the campaign to reset. But Donald Trump isn't listening.
I want this campaign to win, but the campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes.
I think he and the Republican Party would be well served to focus on the policy contrasts.
It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is.
It's going to be a race, and you've got to make this race not on personalities. Stop questioning the size of her crowds.
He's lost control. He's committing political suicide.
It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb. It's not, you can't win on those things.
So stupid. Just focus on the damn borders.
And today, a sign the Trump campaign knows it's trending in the wrong direction. A campaign shakeup, hiring 5 new staffers, including its controversial 2016 campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, who, I remind you, was fired in 2021 for sexually harassing a Republican donor's wife and was arrested in 2016 for grabbing and bruising the arm of a female journalist. That's the state of play with just 81 days before November 5th. Joining me now to discuss is Molly Jong-Fast, special correspondent for Vanity Fair and MSNBC political analyst, and Alencia Johnson, Democratic strategist and former senior advisor to the Biden-Harris 2020 campaign. Molly Jong-Fast, I'll start with you because I think this was one of the things about the Trump campaign in 2016 and 2020 that I always thought was indicative of who this man was. The rehiring Corey Lewandowski is not just a sign that the campaign is desperate, but a man with a marked history of abuse of women. What does that tell you about how desperate or how tone deaf the Trump campaign is in 2024?
Well, I never understand why they don't want to reach out to women and why they want to go double down on this, right? Because they had this opportunity, right? I mean, we saw Nikki Haley. They could have at least pretended to want to win those votes. And it's like at every point they're like, no, we don't want those voters. I mean, we are like more than half of the population. And I just think it's sort of shocking to me. But when you look at those clips, what I'm struck by is all these people who just want Trump to not be Trump. The whole thing about Trump is Trump can only be Trump. Right. There is no other Trump. There's no more focused Trump. They had that. You know, they had other candidates doing sort of Trumpism without Trump, and they rejected them all. So this is the Trump you're stuck with. And the fantasy that you could get some other more disciplined, more organized Trump, that's not how any of this works.
Alicia, I want to ask you, and I pointed this out earlier. You and I both know the D.C. metro area. Getting that many people into Largo, Maryland in the middle of the afternoon to talk about health care, that is a sign. That is a sign of enthusiasm in the campaign. But more importantly, to see Vice President Harris and Joe Biden shouting each other out, supporting each other, happy together. What does that do for the Democratic Party heading into the convention? I mean, we're still living this unprecedented time of Joe Biden dropping out just 3 weeks ago, and he is shouting out the woman who may one day replace him. What does that tell voters?
I mean, you saw these voters and people who support both President Biden and Vice President Harris in the middle of traffic, beltway traffic, the worst in the nation, and long lines. And the reality is what this is showing folks is that there's a unifying message here that she is going to continue the Biden-Harris administration's achievements and priorities. And it lays this up in that if you not only elect her as president, but give her a Senate and give her a House, look what else that we can do. I also appreciate this rally today because as we've been discussing for weeks before she became the nominee, there were a lot of party leaders that were trying to push President Biden out. However, Vice President Harris has stuck beside his side, and she continues to be a partner with him and showing this unity, showing that, hey, we are a team. I don't care what else the party leadership was talking about. We are continuing to be a team, and we have a legacy to protect and to continue, and that will be with her as president. The other contrast and what we see on the other side is President Trump doesn't have any former Republican presidents out here campaigning with him, nor his former vice president. That is a stark contrast among anything else. And while you have Nikki Haley and folks and Kevin McCarthy talking about how he should change his course, we know Donald Trump is not going to do that. He hasn't done it in 2015, and he's not going to do it in 2024.
You know, it is interesting to see all that kind of day one energy between Harris and Biden, and it's a level of loyalty that Trump hasn't been able to garner in 8 years. Molly, I want to ask you about this because I think this is key. When we're talking about why this campaign has flipped, I want to play you some sound from Kellyanne Conway, where I don't think she did what she thought she was doing. I want to get your thoughts on the other side.
Everybody's making her whatever they need her to be. She's so good looking. She's so smart. She's so wealthy. She's so funny. She's close to her mom. She goes on really cool vacations. She'll never break your heart.
I'm sorry, I think she was trying to do something there. I think she just sold me on Harris. What do you make of the fact that Republicans are having trouble because they seem to think Kamala Harris is kind of cool too?
Yeah. I mean, that was an amazing little bit of tape right there. And I do think, look, you know, anyone who has covered the Democrat, especially the Biden administration, knows they've had a lot of trouble messaging. They've had a lot of policies, and a lot of these policies the mainstream media has not been interested in covering. For example, even to that event today was lowering these 6 very popular prescription drugs down. And that was part of the Inflation Reduction Act, which every Republican voted against. So Democrats have quite a lot of policy. They just have trouble messaging on it. And so the fact that these Republicans are saying she doesn't have policy, of course she has policy. She's, you know, she was an attorney general, vice president, member of the United States Senate. If nothing else, she has policy. And this admin is so policy heavy. But I think what's happened is that since, you know, the first time since Obama, Democrats are able to project a sort of message that isn't, you know, that is just sort of the gestalt of all this policy put together.
Lindsay, I want to point this out because I actually think this is key. I want to play you some sound about Trump talking about the economy and then get your thoughts on the other side, because there's a policy element to this that I think is being missed.
They say it's the most important subject. I think crime is right there. I think the border is right there, personally. We have a lot of important subjects because our country has become a third world nation. They say it's the most important subject. I'm not sure it is, but they say it's the most important.
Alicia, what I'm noticing here is that Harris seems to have threaded this needle where she's inheriting the improved economy from Biden. She's inheriting, you know, some of the bigger policy initiatives, the infrastructure reduction, all these sorts of things from Biden, but is being given the benefit of the doubt by the voters to part with him and move in different directions on his unpopular policies. How's she been so effective at doing that in a campaign that, again, is less than a month old?
Listen, it's a very unique position that, quite frankly, we have never seen in our politics before. Right. And it actually works in her favor this go around versus her primary race in 2020. And it's also, this is a culmination of not only the American people getting used to seeing her in this high position, we have the American people who have already gone through a President Trump administration. They've gone through a pandemic. They have gone through overturning Roe v. Wade, affirmative action, attacks on queer and trans kids. The list goes on and on and on. And so the Republican Party has forgotten that the American people is actually paying attention. People are going back to work. They're paying attention to how the economy is now starting to really work for them, right? Like policy is starting to become what they are feeling in their kitchen table conversations. And so it is a unique moment for her to be in. And if she's not clear on the message, I think picking Governor Walz as her number 2 is very clear on messaging when it comes to a lot of these issues. I mean, he's talking in such simple terms that as someone who's worked in communications for the Democratic Party my entire career, he's actually nailed down a message in a way that our party has sometimes had trouble doing so. And so there's the benefit of the doubt here that is really penetrating. And we, have less than 100 days. And so we can only go up from here. It's our race to lose at this point.
Joining us now, Democratic Congressman from Pennsylvania, Brendan Boyle, who served with Tim Walz in the House. So, Congressman, first of all, J.D. Vance, he was in Pennsylvania this morning. Here's some of what he had to say.
We're going to get illegal immigration under control. We're going to make groceries and housing most affordable. And by the way, we have a vision to do it. We actually have the plans. We have the policies to accomplish this stuff. That's a big thing that sets us apart from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
So what are your thoughts about Tim Walz and what he brings to the Trump campaign, coming from neighboring Ohio and certainly appealing potentially to that western part of the state, which has always been a Trump, a very important part of Donald Trump's victories?
Well, first, there's no question that Pennsylvania continues to be the Keystone State. Donald Trump won it in 2016 by less than 1 percentage point, and Joe Biden won it in 2020 by 1 percentage point. We're the biggest of the battleground states, and without our 19 electoral votes, I just don't see a path to victory for either candidate. The good news is, in terms of the vice presidential picks on both sides, every single one of the 11 polls that I've seen since Tim Walz was picked by Kamala Harris show that he is incredibly popular. And literally every single poll that I've seen of the Republican vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, shows the opposite, that he has a higher unfavorable rating than favorable rating. So in what really is the first big decision for any future president, who you will pick as your running mate, Kamala Harris hit a home run and Donald Trump struck out.
You've worked with Tim Walz in the House. What was your experience?
Yeah, I just always call him coach. He was literally coach of our congressional football team, played on our congressional baseball team. Just a great person. I don't know one person who would have a bad thing to say about Tim. And his ability to get along with a wide variety of different folks ideologically while he was in the House really set him apart from most other people. And you see it when he's out speaking. He's just himself. I mean, he is an authentic, genuine person, and I think will help us not just in his home state, but in areas demographically in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, other parts of the industrial North, where, frankly, we as Democrats have not had the best of time reaching kind of people of more of a blue-collar background, especially those who are male.
And we know that, of course, Josh Shapiro maybe came in second, really, as a running mate for many reasons. That he should have been on the ticket, some say, is that he could help deliver Pennsylvania. What do you think about that? And would Shapiro have been a better choice as far as at least winning Pennsylvania?
Yeah, the reality is that Vice President Harris had an embarrassment of riches. Any one of the believed to be 6 finalists brought different strengths and weaknesses to the ticket. I would have been enthusiastic about any one of them. I'm certainly not going to second guess her decision. I just would observe that, as the polls have shown, Tim Walz has been really just a superstar pick. And I think the whole last 3 weeks, I have seen an enthusiasm up and down the ticket in Democratic campaigns, the likes of which I have not seen in a very long time.
And there's a new Cook Political Report poll showing that the Senate race in Pennsylvania has Bob Casey 13 points ahead of David McCormick. Does that sound right to you?
You know, I think, and I was with Bob Casey yesterday at an event celebrating the 89th birthday for Social Security. I think even Bob would say that he certainly wouldn't think he's in a 13-point race. I have no doubt that Senator Casey is leading. I have little doubt that Senator Casey will win. But the nature of Pennsylvania is such that I would anticipate both the presidential race and the Senate race here being single-digit races, but both ultimately going blue this November.
The president apparently was just asked, leaving the White House, to go out to PG County in the suburbs for that event, was just asked about the vice president now trying to distance herself from his policies, and he said she's not going to. Do you think it's important for her to show some differences with the president, for instance, on Gaza or on some of the less popular issues?
You know, the reality is any vice president who is running for president does face this, tension might be overstating it, but you want to show what your vision will be for your presidency, which will look a lot like maybe the president you served as vice president, but of course will also have its differences. Joe Biden knows this. He, as Barack Obama's vice president, running in 2020, had to talk about the ways in which he would be similar to President Obama, but also the ways in which he would be unique and different. Whether it was Joe Biden in 2020 or George Herbert Walker Bush in 1988, or I believe Kamala Harris in 2024, I think people can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think that she can continue to be a loyal and effective vice president, but at the same time reasonably talk about the ways in which a Harris presidency would, of course, be unique and different in their own way.
Congressman, great to see you. See you in Chicago at the DNC.